Hello, everybody. You can see us.
Welcome.
Yes. So we've decided to join 2024. And if you can't see us and you're listening to this in your car, you might want to go to YouTube and check us out because we are now on StreamYard. This is our first recording with StreamYard. And our guest tonight is the perfect guest to have visuals for. We have Sarah Mohr, the Corn Snake Queen. She's been on several podcasts, Corn Stars being one of them. I know that that whole crew loves the material that she produces, which includes things like snakes and books. And we decided that if we were going to go visual, that our first guest should be a guest that requires a visual element. And so Sarah will be talking about morphs of corn snakes tonight, specifically morphs that have popped up in interesting places via people in laboratories, localities, things like that. And it's going to be corn snake specific. So, because that's pretty much what Sarah's known for.
And I want to say two things. So one, if you are listening to this episode, don't think that you aren't going to get the same experience that you've always gotten from CCR, because we're not only will we show the picture for the reference, again, you're going to get the story behind the morph. And I think that that's really what's going to be the exciting piece, for this. I also want to say, for those of you that are watching this, if this is your first time seeing Zac and I, we want to tell you that we are sorry. This is what we look like. We're not happy about it either. Okay.
Yeah, so. It is what it is, man. So,
but here we go.
There you go. All right,
Zac, what's new with you, man? I know you've been in Arizona for the last week.
Yeah.
What's up?
I attended a conference in Arizona, the Invertebrates in Education and Conservation Conference. I think I just butchered the name of it, but it was a wonderful conference. It was a conference that included my Zoosci world. I have a graduate student, Zach Kaminsky, who's one of my absolute favorites, and he basically came to me and said, I want to go to this conference. It's at the end of July. It's in Arizona. And of course, that's the monsoon season. That's also when herping's really good in Arizona. But it's also my anniversary and my kid's birthday. So it's kind of a dangerous time to be leaving. And so, I took that all into consideration. And I basically told Zach, thinking about that, all right, well, we might need to get a little bit of support. So most conferences have these things called travel awards. And that's what I thought initially Zach was applying for. But it turns out he was actually applying for a award to cover travel, but it was a little bit more prestigious than that. And so he applied and got it. So proud of him for that. And the deal was if he got the travel award, was awarded that I would figure out a way for us to go. And so I took Colin to Arizona, his first time going to the desert with me. His birthday was Monday, so it was kind of a sweet 16 birthday present, if you will. And so we rampaged around the desert with two of the professors I teach with and Zach, and then we would go to the conference. And this is my first time hanging out with insect people. I hang out with crawdad people, obviously herp people. And the thing that I learned about bug people is they might be the single most inclusive group of people I have ever met in my life. They accepted everyone, and they didn't really care if you wanted to learn about the bug or not. They were shoving it in your face, and you were learning about the bug. Turns out I really like bugs, so it was great. Seeing that, we found a Gila monster.
That's awesome.
I've got a Gila hat trick. I've gone to the desert to Arizona, New Mexico 3 times. And each time found a Gila. So, and that was really good because my son is a big fan of lizards. And what he said he wanted to find more than anything was a Gila. And I knew that's not the easiest thing in the world. And we were in one of the national forests. And this lady on a bike said, there's this big lizard thing walking across the road down there. And it was probably the most rude interaction I've had with a human in the past 2 years, because I looked down the road and saw it was obviously a Gila, like trucking off the road. And Matt, one of the professors, myself, and Colin just left her, like literally just boom, dust as we're running down. So that was cool. I also finally got a flipping king snake in the desert, which
saw that. Yeah.
Yes, if you've been on the Facebook page, that was actually the herp of the trip for me. And if you herp around that part of the world, I don't want to give the impression they're the easiest thing to find. But by now, I should have found a half a dozen, and that was my first king. And we were west of Tucson, so it ended up, even though we were in the intergrade zone, that thing looked for all the world like a Cali king to me. So that was actually pretty awesome because obviously everybody knows that I'm a king snake guy. So that's that. Came home and checked the incubators here at the house, and I hatched something. I guess yeah. If you listen, you know that lavender false water cobras. And by the way, you can see it now. Repping the shirt for Falvius, our shirt I made with Justin for Falvius with the falsies. But I have officially produced a lavender false water cobra.
Nice.
I made one very small clutch of 3. So I have 2 hets and the female lav. I have a male, so she's not going anywhere. She's staying right here. But that was pretty awesome to walk home to. And then clutches are just hatching all over the flipping place. I had a bunch of blotched king snakes in the incubator here at the house. This is really funny. This actually has bearings with our guest. So I bred an Okatee, what I thought was a pure Abbott Okatee, to our Morphy looking common, nothing fancy corn snakes. And I checked their eggs, and there's what I think are candy canes in there. And I was like, what the hell? So I don't know what the hell genes our Okatees have.
It goes to show you whatever, and I'm going to put this in quotes, locality animals are really only as good as, the individuals you're getting them from, because I mean, once you get a few generations from the actual wild caught collected animals, it's anybody can say it's it's an Abbott's or it's a whatever. So yeah, it happens.
So anywho, so those are down there right now. They were pipping yesterday. I haven't even checked the boxes. I just leave everybody alone for like a day and then go. And then at school we had lots of things hatching. What's really funny, it's not funny, it's actually heartbreaking, is I produced about a dozen locality clutches of Florida Kings. And the one I was most excited about is this locality called wide-banded Pinellas County Kings. And so basically they have nice, big, thick, almost chain king, Eastern King bands on them, but they have Floridana coloration. And first time I produced them was this year, and I got a big clutch, 13 eggs. And I was super excited. And they were part of, I kind of volunteered them to the university to be part of a project. And so I hadn't heard anything from the guy that's Derek, who we talked about, I think, before, taking care of the eggs. And I messaged him while we were away because I thought, man, those things should be here. And they were the ones that people were like knocking my door down for. And I said, what's going on with the wide bandeds? He's like, oh, I forgot to tell you. I was like, oh God, here we go. Most of the clutch went bad. We only have 2 eggs. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? So there you go. So I have 2 males, and I had intentions of keeping like 3 pairs. So the wide banded Pinellas, we got some. It was a little bit of a swing and a miss, but that gives us a reason to hit it again harder next year. But in the meantime, I might have picked up 2.2 adults of those.
Nice.
So if I don't get them next year, I'm going to, next year will be my year. So anywho, and then other than that at the university, just so many babies. I sent you a box.
You did send me a box, yes.
Lots of things in that box.
Lots of nice things in there. Very, very happy with that box.
Yeah, we have another box going to. I think the next box goes to Josh's Frogs. So lots of little hogs and every flipping morph of Florida King you could hope for. Corn snakes. So yeah. So that's my update. You.
Oh, okay. Well, we've I think we're somewhere around 600-700 babies, hatched at this point.
Is that all?
It's back there? Yeah. It's slowing down. There's not 2 or 3 clutches hatching every day at this point. We did have some black milks hatch out. that's always awesome. Gotta love those. Some other fun things as far as black rat mutations and a bunch of Texas rats and a lot of just fun stuff, all across the board. Laticinctus, those are always so neat, whenever they hatch out because of the way they look when they first come out of the eggs. So good stuff there. The room's getting filled very quickly, and we're going through a little bit of an adjustment because Drew, our nursery guy, he's starting college, in a few weeks. And with his college schedule, he's still going to be here, but it would be very difficult for him to keep for him to work what we need to operate the nursery in the way that we need it with the number of animals that we have. So what we've done is we wanted to find a way for Drew to still be able to be on board and kind of get him through this semester and see what kind of adjustments to his schedule happen afterwards. So we came up with the idea. Wendy, my wife, she takes care of the rodents, the rodent room. And that's, a couple day process, in itself. And so what we're doing now is Drew is training Wendy in the nursery and Wendy is training Drew in the rodent rooms. Because it's not just cleaning, there's a process we have in order to keep production, to the highest levels we can in those rodent rooms. And so that way we're trying to ensure that, that Drew learns all those processes and those means to keep it running. And then of course, Wendy isn't necessarily the biggest on snakes. And I apologize for the phone ringing, guys. That's what happens whenever we do it from the shop. But she's learning the method on feeding, the method on, we've talked before about the direction we have our cards and all that. She's learning that piece. And especially right now when it's early in the season, little things like once they've hit the threshold that we have for feedings, consecutive feedings, like once they've eaten this number of times, they're ready to be posted. Well, they turn a card turn the card a certain way. And that tells me it's okay to take the pictures, to get them starred, to get them labeled, all that. And it saves me tons of time if they do it when they're feeding instead of me having to go through hundreds of cards and check the number of feedings. So it's little things like that. They're both, I think, picking it up pretty well and doing great. It's just at this point, it takes us a lot longer to get things done because instead of them each off doing their own thing and knocking it out, there's two people doing it. And it can speed cleaning up a little bit, but it's still training, and training always takes additional time, but good things there. We obviously are preparing for the anniversary event. I keep talking about that. And our sponsor Exo-terra has stepped up in a big way to donate some giveaways, for the shop. We do that every year anyway, and they won't be the only ones. We have others that have done it in the past too, but that's been fantastic that they're doing that. And then of course, as we've got more and more Colubrid Fest pieces that we'll talk about in a little bit. So again, exciting stuff. A couple interesting stories that just took place. So we have the other day, I want to say it's about 4 days ago, Wendy's walking through the store before we open, and there's a Eastern Black King cruising around a corner in the store. And so it's funny because when you see one of those, you have to ask, is it one of ours? Because we do have a couple on display. Or is it a native that just made its way in the building somehow? And this one turned out to be one of ours. So I think that somehow it's popped a latch or something, but got it secured. But that you expect. What you don't expect happened today. And that was a bearded dragon walking alongside the outside of our building.
Oh, shit.
Now you think, how the hell does that happen? And then when you go through all your bearded dragon enclosures and realize this isn't one of ours. And then it's like, okay, did somebody dump this bearded dragon off instead of just coming inside? And no, this happened to be one of the building's neighbors had one get loose And out of all the places for it to come cruise to, it wanted to visit Metazotics. So yeah, luckily we got it. And,
well, the crickets.
You're right. So we got it dropped off back to its home. But that was a neat one. You don't expect a bearded dragon to just be cruising alongside the building in
Nice.
southern Indiana, but here we are.
Yeah.
But good stuff, man. We lots
Yeah.
of stuff happening, lots of things being prepared, and continuing to move in the right direction. So can't complain.
Very good. All righty. I know you have graphs that we can actually see.
This is going to be different for us. So
yeah.
We'll move into the market update, and as always, want to thank the Show Me Reptile Show and Show Me Marketplace for sponsoring the market update. Some Show Me shows that we have in August. Let's see, August 3rd, Pensacola, Florida, Virginia Beach, both have shows. Bloomington, Illinois on the 10th. And we've got, let's see, Gadsden, Alabama, if I'm saying that right, on the 24th. And then I think that wraps up August. So, a little bit lighter show schedule in the month of August. So please, if you are near any of those locations, check them out. Zach, if you want to go ahead and pop up the graphs, we'll go over the changes that we're seeing. So let me open up here so I can see it as well. All right. So the overall mix is still going to be pretty close to the same. We've got ball pythons making up 73% of all listings on Morph Market. Colubrids and boas are tied at 11% each. Other pythons are coming in at 5%, and that's kind of about what we've seen. I want to say we've seen ball pythons as high as 76%. So that is coming down a little bit. And we're seeing a little bit of growth in, I want to say it's the boa market that lifted a little bit because colubrids have traditionally stayed at 11% of the market. For colubrids, just so you know, we've got 35% of the colubrids listed are hognose, 26% are corn snakes. That leaves 39% all others. And I want to say this is possibly the first time that all others has surpassed both corn snakes and hognose. So interesting. And I guess I would say I'm not incredibly surprised, because with this being hatchling season, you've got so many more species that, can hatch out. And so that one's now jumping out. As far as the change, we have every category jumping up from the last show. So ball pythons increased 2%. That was 558. They currently have 33,425 listed. All other pythons jumped up 8%. That was 150 animal increase. Boas only 2%, 116 animal increase. But if you recall, boas were the ones that were creeping up first before anything else started to increase. Colubrids, boom, 12% increase over last time with a 561. I mean, if you look at that, there more colubrids were added than ball pythons were added. And that's, again, shouldn't be surprising, because we know that colubrids hatch out much larger clutches than what ball pythons do. So I think we're going to continue to see the market change at a higher rate on colubrids than anything else. All in, 3% increase. We'll go ahead and we'll skip to our next slide here. So this is something that now I visually can show everyone who want to watch it on YouTube, every other week here. We can see this trend. And this is something that I said that is going to be interesting to watch as we continue to go. And it looks like my arrows got moved a little bit. But it looks like really the July 4th date, roughly, that is where we started. That's what I'm calling the kickoff for the season, because that's where we actually saw it stop, the decline. So sales, boom. Now we're starting to see more animals listed. So that's when all the hatching really started to take place. So what you see here graphed out are ball pythons and just the total number of snakes altogether. And obviously with ball pythons making up about 70% of the market, it's going to continue to, the overall trend is going to follow the ball python trend. However, we will now jump over. Apparently, I've got storms happening out here now. Apologize for that, guys. Jeez. All right, so now we're going to jump over to, this isn't translating well. I promise this graph looked better earlier. As we come over here, same thing, July 4th. It's actually going to be a little moved over a little bit from that arrow. Shows everything starting to kick off. You can see all others. You can see hognose. You can see corn snakes all kind of start to lift off right in that July 4th, July 9th, roughly. So good stuff. And like I said, I continue, we'll map this out further and further as we go. And then I really look forward to seeing how these charts look compared year over year to see if this trend remains the same. But as of right now, that'll be the mark. July 4th will be the mark to know that that's when everything really kind of pops off. So
Very
good
cool
stuff, good market changes. I don't really think there's any big market news other than I know that there was the quote unquote summer slump. But now with by the end of August, all that's going to be on a rise because people want to start spending money as they start seeing more and more pictures posted. You're going to see a ton more animals posted. I personally have posted, I think, 130 or 140 animals in just the past 5 days. So, a lot of choices out there. So that's what I've got for the market.
All right. There we go. Okay. Science update. So I thought I would do something a little different than what we normally do. I could go over an article. There have been a couple articles that have come out, but they haven't really been colubrid centric. That I thought there's a little bit. The new anaconda, which we talked about back in late winter, early spring, has basically created a giant battle among snake taxonomists with this crazy thing called name priority, which is literally like arguing over tax code. And so I thought I could go over that. It would also, I find it boring and I'm a taxonomist. So it also just aggravates the hell out of me that there are people on the planet that get this uptight over things. So, is there a tornado about to take you away?
I'm letting you guys know that, there's a tornado warning now. And there was a big boom right behind me. The lights just flickered for those.
It's because we're doing this.
That's exactly it. So it's telling me take shelter now. And there's no basement where I'm at. I'm in a big pole barn style building. So just cross your fingers for me, guys. If I go dark, I'll message.
Oh dear. Okay. So what I thought we would do is actually just go over a place that the listeners that like the science part of the show, there's a journal that I think I could just introduce the whole damn journal because I love this journal and it's open access. And if you don't know what that means, that basically means every single article that's, housed within this journal is available to you to read. You don't have to deal with what's called a paywall. So if you've ever found a science article that you liked and you clicked and clicked and clicked, and then you get to something, and it's like $39.99. Like, what the hell? It's a PDF. That's a paywall. So I'm going to share my screen now and show off this journal. And it's one that I learned about it when I was writing the book because the South American herpetologists publish a lot of material there, but North American people do, Eurasian people do, pretty much everybody do. So give me one sec. And oh wait, there we go. Okay, share. And so the journal, if you're listening, is called Herpetology Notes. To get to Herpetology Notes, all you have to do is type into the Google Herpetology Notes. So it's not hard to do. But if you get there and you scroll down, as you can see, if you're watching this, it's not the most intensive website. But all of these little doodads that have PDF, these are all articles. So I already looked at this ahead of time. We're going to go all the way down here to the bottom. Sorry if this is making you ill, but there is a colubrid down here. And okay, well, it changed. So okay, must have been on a different page. All right, here we go. Oh wow. All right, I'm definitely clicking this one. So you all just saw how my brain works. This would have been really handy for that little book I wrote. So here's the article: Predation Attempt on Iguana by Phylodryas ulfursi. Ulfursi, by the way, is the Phylodryas species that, according to legend, actually had a fatality. Barons racers were Phylodryas, to give you context. But if it's in the book, there's questionable whether that actually happened. So if we click on this, you will see all the authors, and you can see that all these authors are obviously from South America. And then we're going to click on that. And it's going to create a download. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, there we go. So I think I have to actually get out of here real quick. Okay, remove. And give me 1 sec. Stop screen. Okay, present. Give me 1 second, guys. We're new at this. There we go. Got it. And then boom, there's the article. And so if you take a gander at this, you can see that there's the article right there. They've got a picture. And basically what this is why I like this journal, is this is the stuff that we like. This is basically natural history observations that somebody trained like me or an advanced naturalist, basically walking around, they observe something and they realize, that's not recorded. And so then they take a bunch of pictures, take a bunch of data, and then you can basically read all about ulfursi eating an iguana. And then this right here is a table. If you take a look at the table, showing all the things that man, this would have been really handy for that book. All the things that the animal ate. And then you've got a nice little bibliography down here of showing you other papers related to what we're talking about. So a lot of people in the US know about herp review, as we call it, herpetological review. This is basically herp review, just bigger notes, bigger papers. So if you got a favorite species, go there, do a search, and you can have all this really fun natural history. And I find myself, when I am bored, we lost Clint, hopefully not forever. Anyway, I find myself when I am bored, going to this journal and seeing what we can find. So anyway, I am alone. So bear with me for a minute while I figure out what's going on with Clint. Holy crap. And this is because we're doing this way. Are you alive? Okay. Do you want me to keep going? All right, cool. Okay. We have confirmation that Clint is still with us, so that's good. So I'm running solo now, but that's not a big deal. So we got some Colubrid Fest updates now that the science update's done. So with Colubrid Fest, so much is happening with Colubrid Fest, guys. And I'm just going to say it one more time. I'm not used to this world of working with two individuals that have a business background. I can tell you, after working with Mickey and Clint, and then looking at the world I dwell in education, and working with government contracts and things like that, I really like the efficiency, man. The things that we've been able to do in the past 2 weeks would have taken me in my job probably months to accomplish. So some updates, if you will. First thing is we have a hotel block now. And it's my understanding from Clint that the hotel block has now been basically filled. That we need to add more rooms. Good news is I believe I can do that because I'm the guy that took on the task of getting the hotel block. So if you aren't on Facebook and you listen to our show and you want to get one of these hotel rooms, they're in the Candlewood Suites, Indianapolis downtown medical district. If you're on the official Colubrid Fest Facebook page, I put a link up there to the exact hotel. And what you do, you call in and you basically request a Colubrid Fest room. So say, I'm with the Colubrid Fest group. The rooms are sitting at right now right around $140 a night, which is really good for downtown Indy. With the rooms themselves, they're suites. So basically, within the room, you have a king bed, you have a kitchenette, and you have a sleeper sofa that you can pull out of the couch. So knowing that, get hooked up. Well, wrong word to say. Don't do that in the hotel room. Bring your friends, hang out in the hotel room. If you double up, it's really not that bad of a price. And these are bigger rooms, so we can put multiple people to a room. And when I was making the reservation for the room block, that was okay to do. Other thing about the hotel, which is nice, it's about a 20-minute walk to the venue, but the parking is free. You have to pay for parking at the Indianapolis Convention Center. So we kind of figured out a way to deal with the cost there. It's a bit of a walk. I walk everywhere. Like for IHS, I got an Airbnb, and I think it was like a half-hour walk for me from the Airbnb to the hotel, and I didn't care. Got my steps in. For us, the individual that I was working with said that it's about a 15 to 20-minute walk in. But if you can do that, you avoid having to pay for parking. And then the other thing that's nice is there is a shuttle. So there's a shuttle that actually goes from the hotel to the venue. The issue, though, on that is we can't request the shuttle to leave at certain times, but we can, if you get on the shuttle, it's first come, first serve. You can take that thing right in to the convention center. So that was kind of our big development. So if you want a room, get them now. I'm going to actually add more rooms to the block tomorrow after finding out what I found out. Clint's calling. Hello? Okay. Okay. Do you want me to just keep going? Okay, 1 second. I'm talking to the mic, that's all. All right. Well, why don't you get to a safe place? And okay. Okay, good. Good. Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. Oh my God. Well, I'll just keep it rolling. Okay. So we get one out this week. All right. Thank you. Bye. So, a little pause. The night we decided to do video, a flipping tornado almost takes out Evansville. So there is a tornado near Clint's facility. That was him. If you're listening to this, this will forever be known as the Tornadic episode with corn snakes and Sarah. But anyway, he has no power. So we're not going to have Clint back on anytime soon. But he is safe and his family's safe. Back to Colubrid Fest. We're all over the place. Okay. So with Colubrid Fest, the other thing I want to say is go to the Facebook page and check out the logos. So we have Donovan from Drawn to Scales doing our logos. Mickey wanted nice visuals for our, Colubrid Fest, and he's just completely knocking them out of the park. I am certain when we bring Sarah on, she will appreciate the logos because so far it's just been corn snakes. But they have been phenomenal, like amazing imagery. And I've seen the design that's going to be for the Colubrid Fest poster. and for the t-shirt. And I am beyond geeked to see the final version, which should be coming out around the time this episode is dropping. So we have the marketing piece done. And then the final thing is we had a 3-person meeting today, Clint, myself, and Mickey, and we will be putting up the schedule. So a lot of people want to know, when is WIT? When is what? When does this whole thing start? All that kind of good stuff. When can vendors set up? So the schedule will be landing sometime this week. So expect to see that soon. And by the time we're recording our next episode, I'm certain we will be talking about the details. All the speakers have been arranged -1, and I'm just simply waiting for an email. And our guest tonight, Sarah, is one of our speakers. So that's the other thing I wanted everybody to know, is that we've got Colubrid Fest rocking and rolling. And one more time, this is probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever been associated with so far. So if you're on the fence, just do it. Just go to Indianapolis. You know you want to. That last week in September. We have people coming in from California. We have people coming in from Texas now. We have people coming up from Florida. If they're literally coming from all corners of the country and you're closer, you could make it. So that's my shameful plugging of Colubrid Fest, which I will be doing pretty much until it happens. Clint will as well. So please join that Facebook page. The Facebook page is the official Colubrid Fest group. And right now we're sitting at about 400 members. So if you want updates, that's the place to go. So there you go. All right. So without further ado, that's all of our updates. Like I said, Clint's okay. His family's okay. And that's what's really most important. But we're going to keep this train going down the track, because we don't quit on CCR. So, and hopefully this works well with me having to do everything by myself, which I'm pretty sure I can do. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Sarah. So here she is.
Hello. Can you hear me all right?
I can. A lot of things have happened in the past 35 minutes, Sarah.
I know. I've been here. I've been, it's been an emotional roller coaster.
Yes. Yes, it has. Okay. So thank you for coming on to Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it was absolutely destined to happen, because
at some point, for sure,
it had to. It had to. So if you don't know who Sarah is, Sarah's the owner of Sarah Snake Shop, primarily or only corn snakes.
Only right now. I mean, there's dreams of other things, but right now, just corns.
Okay, corns. And then what needs to be plugged is Sarah has written not 1 but 2 books on corn snake morphs, and I got gratis copies before she came on today. And I have to say, if you listen to the show religiously, I don't really understand morphs. My brain doesn't work that way, and I'm writing this hognose book. Actually, John Rice, who's my co-author on that's coming into West Liberty tomorrow to go over morphs with me. But Sarah's book actually helped me out a ton. Like I spent a good 3 hours just scrolling through my PDF copy. So it's an amazing, awesome bit of corn snake lit. So if you want a book on corns and you especially do the morph thing, get it. So that is my plug, and I'm certain it'll come back up again later on in the episode. So, Sarah, how'd you start? Where did you get the idea that I'm going to own a bunch of corn snakes and write books about them one day?
I mean, so I've always had reptiles my whole life. My dad also was like obsessed with snakes growing up. I have pictures of my grandma holding snakes, I mean, it was definitely like in my blood already. And my first breeding experience, if that's what you want to call it, I was 3 years old, and my dad and I kind of, as a 3-year-old, had caught a garter snake in our backyard, and we had an old fish tank, so we put her in there, and it was just going to be like, Sarah will have her first snake, but it'll just be overnight. The whole thing was, it was just going to be overnight. Then we'll let it loose outside. And my dad thought maybe we'll feed it some earthworms. Sarah will get to see what, a snake looks like when it's eating. Because at that point I hadn't really seen that, being that young. And so I woke up the next morning and there was not one, but there was like 21 snakes in this container that was this 10-gallon tank with newspaper and a water bowl. And that was the most fascinating thing of my life. I think that might be one of my first memories ever.
That'll hook you.
Like I was little. It was before my brother was born, so I was younger. I was at least 3 or younger. So that's just always been a part of my life. Reptiles have always been a part of my life. But as far as corn snakes go, when I turned, I think I was like 16 or 17, a new pet store came into town. And at that time, I didn't have snakes. I hadn't had snakes most of like high school. I remember around high school age, kind of just didn't really have pets of, I didn't have my own pets. And as soon as I saw a snow corn snake, I was like, I have got to get myself a pink corn snake. That is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I remember thinking, like, I had never seen a pink snake, and I was so used to garter snakes and water snakes and decays. Those are the things I catch around here. Yeah. And the fact that I remember one thing that made me fall in love with corn snakes immediately was they wrap around you and they hold on to you. And the decays, the garters, the water snakes, they don't really do that, And so all of these snakes that I was used to handling were just handled so differently than corn snakes. And just the fact that a snake was holding on to me and not just flailing about, that was it. I fell in love. That was the moment. So I got a snow corn snake, which I did not do my research and it ended up escaping. But then when I actually turned 18, I got a job at that pet store and bought a normal corn snake, which ended up siring a ton of clutches, and his name was Flair. And so my Flair line of snakes are all snakes that come from my very first corn snake. So that's where there you go. That's the basic story.
Okay.
Clint also said he's backstage if you want to let him in.
I see him. I was going to let you tell your story, and boom, there he is. Clint is back from the tornado.
I made it. I thought it was you about to say I was told to not leave the building. I was told to stay here, and then the lights came back on. So, hey, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to podcast, right? That's
there you go.
Dedication. So,
well, why don't you ask Sarah the next question? I asked the origin story.
The origin story. Okay.
Well, I asked that question, so you move on to the next.
Thanks for just throwing me in, Zach.
Yeah.
See
boom,
see what I come up with.
Throwing you a bone,
Got it. All right. So we talked about the origin. I got that part. Why corn snakes? And forgive me if that was discussed in the origin, because I may have missed the beginning. So what took you to, I guess, corn snakes and or colubrids, period. But I know corn snakes are really where your heart's at. So
yeah. So colubrids in general is because that's what we could catch mostly around my area. I would often catch, we have a lot of decays, brown snakes. We have garter snakes around here. We have water snakes. And that's colubrids are just what's around here. And so that's what I knew how to keep anyway. That's kind of, I kind of always, as lazy as this is going to sound, I wanted something that if my power goes out, isn't going to die. If my power goes out, no matter what time of year it is, a corn snake isn't going to die in my area anyway. I'm in northern Indiana, Fort Wayne, so opposite of where
I'm at.
Yeah. And so and we're also experiencing some weird storm things going on, but I think that we're okay. Either way, so colubrids, just because that's what was around me, and also I'd experienced pythons and stuff. I don't like pythons because of the holes in their faces. And I know that that's why a lot of people like them. But I cannot get past crater face. I just cannot get past it. And except for I did have some Antarisa pythons. I had some they weren't children's pythons.
Spotteds?
They were spotteds. I had some spotteds, loved the spotteds, would have kept the spotteds. It just didn't work out. It just, things sometimes just don't work out. It didn't work out. But if I was going to get a python, those are the pythons I like, but they don't have like the gigantic pits. So I kind of stayed away from those. And I've tried so many species. I've tried different kinds of boas. I've had rubber boas. I've had sand boas. I've had rosy boas. I got into the rosy boas because that was my dad's favorite snake when he was young. Somehow he had gotten a rosy boa, I don't know, 50 years ago, but he loved having his rosy boa. And so, but they just weren't my thing. I don't know. I found them to just be they just didn't have the personality that I like. They don't have the spice that I like. The corn snakes, I like, and I've had red tails too, as an adult. I love red tails. My husband is tolerant of the snakes. And he'll hold them at the show. He's pretty much my dedicated like snake holder. So when people want to come up and pet snakes, he's the one holding the snake so that I can deal with the table, and right. So we always have people going off to pet the snake. He's the one who handles that. So he doesn't mind holding them and stuff. And he doesn't really mind being bit by them. And that's another thing that I like about the smaller snakes is like, getting bit by them doesn't really bother anyone too much. It kind of just scares you the first couple times it happens, and then you're over it after that. But like, he didn't want anything too big, and he thought that red tail boas were too big. And so after my last female passed away, we just didn't get any more, which was fine. So yeah, as far as like settling with corn snakes, it's just I got my first one. And I fell in love with it because it would hold on to me. And because, the DKs, the garters, none of them really want to like grab onto you to hold on to you. And just like having that little tiny itty bitty snake the size of my finger, I don't know. I just immediately fell in love. So, and as far as the breeding was mostly unintentional, which I'm sure happens to most people. I got my first snow corn snake that escaped, and I never found it. And then I got my normal flare who sired my whole flare line. So again, if anybody is like wanting some sort of like OG Sarah's Snake Shop, whatever, the flare line is definitely one that's got some old blood in it. And then the guy who is now my boss at my real job, but it used to just be a family friend, had come to my graduation party at high school graduation party, and just gave me a snake, just gave me a corn snake. He's like, I had bought this for my my grandson and he doesn't want it. Here you go. So I get this random corn snake that was so emaciated. I didn't have anything that it could eat, and so I had to thaw it out. I thaw it out like just a piece of pork. Like we had like a just like pulled pork that had no spices, no nothing. And I had literally no other food for this tiny itty bitty snake. It was so tiny. And it ate it down a piece of pork like it had not eaten in months. And I don't think it had. That's a whole other story. That snake was always mean. He was always a jerk. But one of my friends ended up taking him and giving him a good home. So whatever. But then it kind of just snowballed from there. Once you have two snakes, then you're known as the person who has snakes. It's like you have a snake and it's like, oh, you have a snake. You have two snakes, you're the person who has snakes. And so since I was also working at a pet store, anytime someone with corn snakes would come in, we would have a conversation about corn snakes and I liked corn snakes and they liked corn snakes. And so then I was known as the corn snake girl at this pet store. And being known as the corn snake girl meant that people who didn't want their corn snakes anymore came into the pet store and said, here you go. Oops, sorry, I just hit the mic. Said, here you go. Here's the corn snake I don't want anymore. And so rapidly my collection was growing. And this was around 2011. And at this point, I had already learned how to sex them for the most part, except I made one mistake. I thought that there was a female that was a male. And then I was told it was a female, of course. And so I was like, oh, well, I did a lot of cohabbing back then. I really don't anymore. But I'd have a gigantic enclosure and have like 3 corn snakes in there. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got space. I could put one more female in with these 2 girls. And sure enough, 2 months later, I have females laying on eggs.
That one female's like, yeah, go ahead. I can fit in there too. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. So then that was in 2011. I had my first 2 clutches of corn snakes, and I still have my Halo line came from that first breeding as well. So again, if anybody wants any OG Sarah Snake Shop stuff, my Halos all originated from my very first hatch. So
nice.
Yeah, and then I was just addicted. I was like, it's Christmas in July. We're doing this every year. And that was it. It was like an immediate addiction, no turning back. This is happening forever. Like that was it.
Oh my goodness. So
very nice. So
where is the collection at now?
Right behind this wall. It's so this is my home office. I also work from home for my regular job. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to have I don't mind having snake art in the background of a Zoom call but I don't want to have reptiles in the background. If I'm talking to my accountant, it's just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and my boss didn't really want that either. He's like, art is fine. And by the way, speaking of Donovan Winterberg, drawn to scales, most of this back here is his art. The majority of it, not all of it, but almost all of it was done by him. So, and there's some over there too. So almost everything was done by him. So yes, I'm very excited that he's doing the Kluberg Fest logos. That's really awesome. Please get me back on track. What were we talking about?
How many corns exist now? What are the morphs that you're keeping?
Okay, gotcha. So I don't know. I'm trying to think, because the thing is, okay. I want to say 100 adults, probably 100 breeding adults, maybe less, maybe like 90, something like that. And then I am raising up about 40 yearlings and subadults that are not like in the adult area yet. And then the babies that I'm going to hold back this year are gonna triple the size of my collection. I have no idea what I'm gonna do, but I only hatched. Okay. I've only hatched. I want to say like 110 babies so far this year. But I mean, like, I live in a 1,600 square foot house in the middle of a regular suburban neighborhood. So like, to have like 300 snakes in a room is still a lot for what I have available to me. We have a dream of this being closer to my full-time job in the future and having an actual facility. We're not there yet.
That's kind of one of the jokes that I tell people here is, because especially when someone's getting that first snake or that first reptile, I'm like, this is going to be an addiction for you. I'm going to warn you now. I go, what happens is no one has 5. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 19, 20, 21, just that's what happens. And I said, it's going to start off with a cage. Then it becomes a corner. Then it becomes a wall. Then it becomes a room.
All of the walls.
Yep. Then it becomes a basement.
Yeah.
Then you're buying a 9,000 square foot building. It's that's kind of what ends up happening. So
where did that $200,000 go? I don't know what happened to it.
Exactly. So I get
wow.
it. So my question, is going to go, what made you decide? Because for the listeners that haven't, that they don't know you, you've written a couple books on corn snake morphs, and it's, a lot of like the history and where they came from and that kind of thing. What made you decide to go there? Because, there's a lot of people that get into snakes, get into reptiles, and a lot of people that love the morphs, love the genetics, because it's fun, right? You get to mix and match and see what you create. And that is very exciting. And with corns, there's tons of them. But what made you decide that you wanted to take that step to actually go into that research part of it? Instead of just seeing what you can make, you went in reverse. Where did it come from? So I'm curious, what made you decide to go that direction?
It was a very long and meandering road. And I think so I ended up being a philosophy major in college because I love learning about history from like very niche perspectives. And so for one, like the history of the morphs was interesting to me just in general because I enjoy history of weird things. Like, so I was interested in that anyway, especially because of all the mutations. I don't know about y'all, but I grew up believing or being taught that like there was no such thing as a positive mutation. Every mutation is negative, which is not true. I don't believe that now, but that's what I was taught to believe. And so, as soon as I walk into this pet store and I see this pink snake, where I had seen pictures of corn snakes online, and like they were, your brown, red, whatever. Like to see this mutation. And of course, people still, some of them maybe think that amelanistic is a harmful mutation. They did way back in the beginning, like they euthanized a lot of the original amelanistics just because it was like taboo to even have them. It's kind of like having a stargazer now. So just to sort of see that, hey, this animal has these mutations and it's not harmed, it's fine. And I know that that's kind of a weird way of thinking of it, but I was like, I want to see what else happens. What else can happen here? And so I start researching what else can happen with corn snakes. And it turns out they can be spotted and striped, and they can have checkered bellies or no belly checkers, or they can be purple or pink or yellow or red. And like you can get a corn snake in any color. And I just was absolutely fascinated by all of that. And so the first corn snake book that I bought was Kathy Love's corn snake book. And she had a very brief section. I had two of them. I had the little corn snake manual that came out first, and then she had kind of a more it's behind me actually somewhere. She had a more detailed book later on, which is the one that most people get, the Comprehensive Owner's Guide, I think.
Yep.
And so in the back of both of those, there's a little morph section that goes over the histories. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I just thought it was so cool that some of these are found in the wild. And like, wow, I didn't know that mutations could happen in the wild. And that was a whole other step in my mind, was like, oh yeah, these mutations can happen in captivity and not die, but can they happen in the wild and not die? And sure enough, there's populations of anorithristics and hypos, that they're just found out in the wild. And so it just piqued my curiosity in a way that nothing else really did. And I kind of taught myself basic genetics doing that. Like I took genetics classes in college because I started out as a pre-vet major, ended up going philosophy because I didn't want to cut animals open for a living. I was like, veterinary, maybe not. And I had philosophy as a minor. So
people don't understand that you do a lot of death when you're a vet.
Yeah. And I mean, I do a lot of death anyway, because like, if you're breeding animals, some of them are going to die. Like
when you work with life, you deal with death.
Yes, absolutely, when you work with life, you deal with death. Exactly. So, sorry, I have allergies and it's like going crazy right now. Back on track, please. I have ADHD. So,
what made you decide to write the book?
Okay, yes, I told you it was meandering. Here we go. Okay, so
that's how we roll.
Okay, so obviously there was the curiosity with the history, and then the curiosity with the genetics, and then then I became interested not only like in kind of both, because the history of a corn snake's morph a lot of times isn't always the person who found it. It's not always the person who found the morph that proved it out. And the Pritzels, Chuck and Connie Pritzel, did a ton of work in this. I think cornguide.com is still up, and it has a ton of like super, like if you want to just read about corn snake genetics, they did an amazing job of doing all of that. They go into much more detail than I ever even could. I don't have a laboratory to do all the stuff that they did to like write that book. But they stopped publishing it around the same time that I started breeding corn snakes. They had like a yearly, it would come out once a year. And I think that the latest one was 2011 or 2012, and then they stopped releasing them. So that's kind of what I wanted I don't want to say I wanted my book to fill that niche, but I kind of did, because I was very interested in his books, and he had the histories in there and how things were proven out and what, the genetic processes were and what you can see if you look under a microscope versus what you can see without looking under a microscope. Mm-hmm. He had so much good information, but it stopped. And there were so many other morphs out there that had that, history was being made as I was doing things, as I was researching, and I realized that like no one is documenting it in the way that Pritzl did. And so I just started doing it for myself because I was interested in it. Mm-hmm. I just started, around that time, I think Tessera was brand new. Scaleless was pretty new or non-existent yet. Palmetto was definitely non-existent yet. I remember, it was a while ago. Obviously, like Black Diamond is very new, so that it wasn't out yet. Peach was not proven to be its own mutation yet. Red Factor hadn't been separated from Hypo yet. Like, there are so many things that had not even happened yet in his books. And I was like, well, now's the time. In my mind, I thought now's the time to get this information, because the longer you go on, the harder it's going to be to dig through all these forums to find the information. So I just did it for myself, copying and pasting, and I just printed it off on my printer at home. And I eventually became the admin of the Corn Snake Morph ID help group on Facebook. And that was some of the information a lot of people wanted to know was like, well, how did this morph come about? And so I was the one who had that information. And so they were like, please give us, at least a brief paragraph, and so I was writing it also for this morph group anyway, because I was educating through this morph group anyway. And so it kind of all just fell together. And then one of my friends who was really interested in corns was like, hey, you said you were doing history stuff. Did you still have those papers you printed? And so I just gave them to him because at that point I already had everything typed up and saved and posted, mostly publicly. Some of the stuff, obviously the book was polished up, and so the book itself is not public, but like a lot of the information is. And my friend said, you should really just print it, just get it published. It's like, it doesn't cost anything. And Donovan Winterberg even was the one who said, just go through Lulu. Mm-hmm. And I resisted for years, but I finally did it. And now you can finally just go buy a copy. I personally printed the first few copies of it, but then when we did the second edition that added some morphs in and updated the information, we wanted it to be able to be printed through a third party instead of me printing it.
So if people want to get it, let's just be real. Can they get it?
Yeah.
Is it still on Lulu?
It is.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So you can just look at my name, Sarah Mohr, MOHR.
So here's how this works. You can get the book on Lulu, and then you can bring it to Colubrid Fest, and then you can have Sarah sign it.
So I'll be there. I'll be there all 3 days.
Yes, and you will be at Colubrid Fest, so let's just keep this segue going. See what I did there? So at Colubrid Fest, the way we're doing the talks on Saturday is we are kind of having topics, if you will, and then we're bringing on someone that Clint and I respect, and you are certainly one of those people, to then basically kind of introduce the topic and then have a nice oral conversation about the topic at hand. And the conversation you are going to have is the process of morphs. And so what we mean by that is, how do you prove a morph out? How do you decide this is a morph, this is not a morph? What criteria does that entail? And it's going to be a conversation that we introduce with Sarah. Sarah's going to give a 20-minute, talk on the subject. And then it's going to be an open forum with the audience, us and Sarah, on this topic. So, yeah. So then that begs the question, what are we talking about tonight? So tonight is a little bit different, similar topic, just more, zoomed in, if you will. So if you don't mind, Sarah, because I asked Sarah in setting up the episode, so what are we going to talk about specifically that doesn't lead to overlap with Klubertfest? And Sarah's like, I got an idea. So what was that idea?
Well, as you have mentioned, I mean, we talked a little bit about history and like how my books are mostly about the history of stuff. And of course, we're going to be, since we're going over how to prove things out or how to determine what a morph is, more of the genetic side of things at Klubertfest. I kind of wanted to stick more with the history of things here. So there's a few morphs that I thought were very interesting, especially since we have talked in the past. Well, one of you has at least mentioned to me that you wanted to sort of integrate education into the hobby as much as possible. Yep. And when you said that, the first thing I thought was, well, there's some morphs that were found in university breeding programs, and that seems like that ties into education pretty well. And there's also just some other morphs that came into the hobby in relatively interesting ways. So and I also thought that it would be interesting to go over maybe the most recent one that was found and maybe the most expensive. And so those are the ones that I have sent to you.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, and we've already talked to Sarah about, she will be coming back, just so y'all know. But with these taxa that we have, well-known morphs and a history, and the kind of nuts and bolts nerdiness of herpetoculture, where we all love, like, well, where the hell did that come from? Who found that? How did we prove that out? Now that we have the visual element to the podcast, we can still talk about it. You can still listen to it while you're driving in your car. But now we're going to actually be able to show the morphs, because I can tell you, as the guy who's still learning them, I have to see these things to understand what the hell's being discussed. I don't double stripe, hit stripe, nose stripe, whatever. That I don't know what, like, my brain. I'm such a visual person, and so with these Morphopedia episodes, we'll probably be doing these with other species as well, but corn snakes get the first go because they're kind of the OG when it comes to all of this. So let's just jump right in. So tell me which morph you'd like me to bring up first.
Well, if you don't mind, I want to describe for the audience what a corn snake looks like for people who, because not everybody here's into corn snakes. So it's a snake that's maximum as big around as a golf ball, usually a little bit smaller, usually around 4 feet long, and they have blotches that go down their backs that are shaped like saddles that you put on horses. We do call them saddle blotches, and they usually have dark colored borders around those blotches, and then they usually have a ground color underneath that. The ground color is usually going to be tan or orange, sometimes red, and sometimes colorless, but usually we're looking at a tan. And then the saddle blotches themselves are usually going to be red or orange as well. So just so you know what a normal corn snake has, it has saddle blotches, it has belly checkers that look like Indian corn, which is what I tell people it's named for. I'm not 100% sure if that's the exact reason, but I believe that's one reason in my head. Correct. Yeah, exactly. So you have the saddle blotches, the belly checkers that look like Indian corn, a usually tan colored ground color, and then the black borders. Sometimes the borders aren't there at all, but usually there's some, at least a little bit there. So a mutation, all of these that we're talking about are mutations. We usually call them morphs as well, but there are some morphs that are not mutations. Today, all of the morphs that we're going over are mutations. So I guess the first one, since we were talking about education and universities, you could bring up Odd, I guess. Odd is an odd one, obviously. Odd was found in 2005. Yep.
I'm gonna say I don't even know if I've heard of this one. But then again, there's so many corn morphs that I'm like,
I'm having. That's It's not. It's not very widely known because the people who found it just did not, they're not corn snake people, so they didn't care to put it into the hobby. So they're just like, oh, we found this mutation and we are a research facility. We will research this mutation. And so occasionally BGSU, who found this morph in their herpetarium, they just started kind of slowly once in a while releasing papers saying we found this mutation, but like they weren't actually like telling the corn snake community about it. The community itself didn't know about it very well. So how odd changes the pattern is it usually reduces or completely removes all the belly checkers. So you're going to end up with kind of just a blank white belly usually. Sometimes you'll see a few checkers in there, but they're not as like prominent. The saddle shapes, instead of turning into saddle shapes, almost look like little bow ties or little just like streaks going across the body. And usually the ground color has a little bit more saturation in it too. It's a little bit more of a brown than a tan. When this is mixed with other things, that's a whole different thing. That's something else. Yeah, so these are, I don't have anything. These are the only two photos that I have of them, but these are both normal versions, like
so I have,
without being mixed with anything else.
I've got a statement and then a question. So the statement, for those that can't see the pictures and are listening, basically what this looks like to me is a prairie king snake. So if you know what a prairie king snake looks like, take that and put a corn snake head on it. And that's pretty much what you're looking at right now. Same coloration and saddle marks, really. You said that this was discovered in 2005. Was this something that popped up in a captive collection, or was this something found, or what was that piece of it?
Mm-hmm. It was found in a captive collection in BGSU's breeding program. They just had breeding programs for students to do projects on, and at some point they started getting these ones that had odd patterns on them. And actually it came out of a blizzard originally. There's a lot of Okatee in the line. Like a lot of the babies that come out are very like obviously Okatee stock. So I imagine that it came out of Okatee originally, but I don't want to say that for sure. But they Eileen Underwood was the one who was sort of heading up the program, and they did a ton of research on odd. There's a ton of published content on it. I did a deep dive on it on my channel that I have linked, like a ton of stuff from BGSU. So if anybody wants to read that, that's available. I linked that down below so that you guys could kind of, if anybody wants to like go there, you can.
Whoa. A couple other, is this recessive?
Yes.
Okay, so recessive trait. And well, if it's recessive, then that would kind of cancel out my next question, because my next question was going to be, and I'm assuming that they've been able to prove that, that it's pure, being that it, when I described it looking like a prairie king snake, that means it would also kind of resemble an emery. An emery rat.
Yeah.
Like if someone showed me that and I didn't know it was a morph, that's exactly where I would go is, that's got emery in it. Would have been my first assumption. A
lot of people thought that originally, but there's no known interbreeding anywhere in not interspecies crosses in BGSU's program. They've only ever had corn snakes in this program and bred corn snakes together. And there was a decent amount of inbreeding going on. And so something broke, and this is what we got. Now, I do say that it's recessive. It kind of is sort of what I'd say incomplete dominant, but I'm not sure if that's the right word exactly. But the visuals and hets tend to grow at a slower pace. So technically in heterozygous form, it does have some like phenotypic changes. They just aren't like obvious in a morph type of way.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
Growth type of way. So they do take about twice as long to get to, twice as long of time to get to size. no matter how much they eat. And that's just them. And a lot of times they were breeding females at 3 years old, but they really needed to wait until they were 5 to 7 years old to breed them, to be successful with them, really.
That's interesting.
Tell you what, I'm digging this because everything that was just discussed to me is so much more interesting than even looking at the snake. I love the background.
That's what I think too.
Yeah, I love just hearing that, they grow slower, they, all that. And whenever you said that the hets can have, even a kind of a look to them or something, that stands out even in a heterozygous form, I see the same thing in like black rat snakes, for example. Whenever you start getting multiple het, meaning an animal that's got multiple hets in it, I can almost point at it and tell you which one, is because it starts to look a little lighter, even it's not a visual hypomelanistic, but it seems like it still is influenced in a heterozygous form.
Yeah.
It also works with false water cobras.
So we're seeing this across a lot of species.
Yep. I actually like the hets that come from a normal lavender breeding more than the lavenders. There's in the little microscopic world of false water cobra breeders, there's this kind of push to call the hets lemons because they turn a lemon yellow. And I like that.
See, so that definitely seems like we would consider that incomplete dominant. We'd be like, oh yeah, that's definitely different.
Yeah. So, all right. So I just have a quick question though about BGSU. I'm not familiar with that school. Do you know which school BGSU is?
Bowling Green State University.
I didn't know that either.
In Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm really familiar with that school. I actually think I know this exact program.
Yeah.
I think I bought a gargoyle gecko off of them.
Yes, they do. They do have geckos.
Yep. All right. Never mind. I totally know this. Oh, that's really cool. I'll talk to her the next time I'm at the show. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly. And they do sell these at shows occasionally. You'll see them on tables. They kind of just, when they have a surplus of them, just like give them to people to be like, here, just go sell these for us somewhere. And you can kind of buy them online. I actually hatched an A-male odd this year. I have an adult female A-male odd that was like 700 grams when I got her. So she definitely, like, they were really hesitant to breed her, and frankly so was I. When you have a morph that at one point in time was sort of known for killing its females, because I guess you guys don't know this. I guess I should have said this earlier. Precursor: the females do have a tendency to die of egg binding. But again, that's because they were breeding them when they were too small. They were breeding them at the correct age, but they were too small. And so once people were actually getting their females up to size and breeding them, no problems. Now, I will say that my female did take a substantially much longer time to begin her egg laying process. Like, I was beginning to question if she became egg bound on egg 1, because she bred like on the same day as one of my other, like a few of my other females. Cause you go through the cycle and you're putting males in with the females on the same day. And I saw them lock, and she was like three weeks post when I was expecting her to lay, but she didn't seem like there was a problem either. So I waited, and then sure enough, one day I go in and she's got her pearly whites. So it did take her longer, but she did great. A lot of the eggs were infertile, which is also something that happens with these. They have fertility issues. So just generally low fertility. I bred my het odd male to this female, and I also bred him to a Keys female, because I really wanted to go in a Keys direction with this, which I don't know if you guys know what Keys corn snakes look like. They're a little bit lighter in color. They're usually missing a lot of the belly checkers. They were even thought to be a different species at one point, or a subspecies or something like that. So I bred him to the Keys, and she completely slugged out, which is unusual for her. And I only got like 4 good eggs, and only 3 ended up hatching from my actual visual odd female. However, I was able to hatch 1 visual odd, an A-male odd, and I also got an A-male, and I had 2 normals, but one of them came out of a really moldy egg, and it was not healthy, so it was king snake food, unfortunately. I have one king snake, and he has one job.
Nice.
It's not good to meet your king snake, I take it. If you're
No, not usually. If you're another snake, unless I find him a female, then pretty much no other snakes are going to want to meet him.
Gotcha. All right.
So where are we moving to now? About to say, yeah, I'm liking
that's
this.
one. So there's another one that was also found by a professor, Castagna. It's pronounced, it looks like Castani, but it's pronounced Castagna.
I didn't know that this morph was named after him, because I know exactly what you're talking about because of this. So
wait. Give me 1 second. A little clunky.
I believe in you.
I can do this.
Well, if you want, why don't we just hit going forward? Just hit next, whichever one pops up. Do you just want to move to that
I mean,
one?
that's fine with me.
Yeah, let's just do that.
The reason I picked the one I did was because it was the first one that came in my head. So
yeah,
it should be the first one, actually.
Let it pop up, whatever the next slide is, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
All right. So here's Castagna. Now, this biology professor did not want to be known and is still anonymous to this day. However, he bred two seemingly somewhat normal corn snakes together, and a few of these babies popped out looking kind of tan instead of like a normal looking corn snake. And so let me see. I'll just read this tiny blurb that I have up here. Frank and Michael Schaub are the names of the brothers who initially ended up getting this mutation and proving it as a mutation from the original professor who produced it. So I don't have too much information about where exactly and when, other than it was in Germany in 1998. And yeah, it's been a long time. In 1998, the sort of normal looking snakes were purchased and bred and produced these kind of weird looking ones. And Castagna, it looks somewhat unremarkable in its normal form, I think. But when you mix it with other things, especially like AML, it really just makes everything pop. Like those oranges just come out. They literally call a line of amelanistic Castagnas flamingo, because they have that bright flamingo pink. And I don't have a photo of that here, unfortunately. But again, if you want to visit I have the links down there if you want to visit those to see where this information came from. These are like things from the book, so you can go look them if you want.
They have real quick. They have a strong the Kurtz rat snake vibe to me. Yeah, if they were yellow, that's what I would think they were.
Yeah, I think that's cool. a very good analogy to it. For those who can't see the pictures, basically what I would say if I was describing this corn snake is you're going to have some reduced black. The saddles have more of like a pencil thin black etching, along the edges rather than, a border. And I would say it's like the orange is washing over the entire snake to a degree. Not like, like there's still distinct saddles and distinct background, but like Zac just said, imagine, Decay's rat snake, the way that yellow washes over the entire snake to a degree. That's kind of what this orange does. Peach, like a peachy orange washing, over the entire animal. And this is a recessive as no. It's kind of like
another mutation.
Right. Yeah, so well, words are important, Clint.
Well,
right?
here's the thing. Peach is another mutation that also has an orange wash and pencil thin borders. So
Jesus. Okay. All right. And this is a recessive as well. Is that right?
This is recessive. Yeah. Peach is actually not recessive, but Castagna is recessive with no known visual hets. In fact, I just hatched from two random corn snakes this year. I hatched two Amel Castagnas. And I don't have any in my collection. I don't have any Castagna in my collection. And I was like, what is this crazy thing that just hatched? And that's the only thing it can be. Nice. But I don't know where it came from. on either side of the parents' lines. But Castagna is one of those that tends to pop up everywhere. Like at least once a year, somebody else has some mystery Castagna that popped up randomly. And Castagna has, to my knowledge, the most like lines of any single mutation. So there's copper, mahogany, Java, the original Castagna, which is also known as the German line Castagna, sometimes also called the red-headed Castagna, but sometimes the German Castagna and the red-headed Castagna will actually be separated. And so, I mean, there's just like this an absolutely massive number of different lines of Castagna in different places that it has randomly popped up in different people's collections. So, fun facts.
Lots of fun.
And it's also allelic. It's allelic to Sunrise. And something else, maybe. I can't remember.
One of the things I want to say, and this goes way, way, way back to a not an Alterna episode. This was back when it was Zac and Matt, John Lasseter. Whenever you guys were interviewing him, I loved that episode and loved hearing. One of the things he said that he would often do with wild caught animals from the same area is, he would breed them and then he would take the babies and breed the babies together. And he called it mining for morphs. And that phrase has stuck with me. And I just find it interesting because, when you talked about some inbreeding that was taking place with BGSU, if I'm saying it right, and then, from this biology professor, it's essentially it's interesting to me whenever a morph just pops up in captive collections, and it wasn't a morph that was found in nature. And that's essentially what's happened is, morphs were mined, whether intentionally or unintentionally, because of all the captive lineages that, over and over. I mean, of course, it's good Lord, I often joke when someone's like, when someone says, do you have any normal corn snakes? And I always say, well, I may have corn snakes that look normal, but they're going to carry a het of something because I don't know if a normal corn snake really exists in captivity anymore.
I mean,
some gene mutation in it. So
and even ones that have been purely bred wild for a long time, you just get mutations that pop up. German
mining for morphs, So
well, I mean, like even if you do get pure wild snakes, like something may still come out of it. Obviously, I mean, absolutely. It has, So
I've said this before, and I will say it again. There are 3 species that, when we think of it, when it comes to snakes, 3 species that just have an incredible amount of mutations. You've got ball pythons, you've got corn snakes, you've got hognose. And it just makes you wonder if more and more of these other species that do have some mutations out there, if they are bred constantly like these have been, what else is there? What else is out there that we haven't discovered, haven't figured out yet? Because it can't just be 3 to 5 species that have this many morphs.
Oh yeah,
it's in there. These mutations are out there, so it's very interesting.
To kind of get into the science a little bit, there's a lot of the founding stock that we collect from the wild. It's coming from a depressed, a population with depressed genetic diversity. There you go. So if it's prone to mutation, i.e., generating weird phenotypes or morphs, you can collect 30 animals from that particular population. Not saying we should do that, but genetically they might be equal to 2. Like we just did this with the crayfish, and what's really interesting is here I am doing this crayfish genetics project, and the entire time I was thinking about snakes. Like it was like because I was learning a lot about inbreeding depressions and background mutation rates and how mutations become fixed. In that just because you have a big N in your population, you got a lot of animals that if it went through a genetic bottleneck, you're stuck with the genetics that you had generations ago because of inbreeding and things like that. So I just think with the hognose in particular, because that's obviously my cup of tea, corn snakes as well, some of these populations that are what we call insular, so basically you've got this like a great example would be, and I'm not promoting going out and doing this because I don't think you're allowed to, and I think they are protected. But corn snakes in Kentucky are a great example of an insular population because
they are
over
protected
around Mammoth Cave. They are protected, so leave them alone. But that population's just been kind of out there on its own, and so over time, it's retracted and expanded and retracted and expanded. But each time it retracted, it could have lost a little bit of its genetic diversity. And if you just get a random mutation there that creates more pink, red, yellow, black, whatever, that then comes fixed. So then when you start breeding, you force the inbreeding a little bit more and do what we do with, breeding sibling to sibling. Holy hell, you got the rainbow at your fingertips. And I think with hogs, that's what's gone down because the hognose snakes in particular, they're easy. Corn snakes a little bit difficult. The hognose, we have all these isolated glacial refugia that the hogs got stuck in, and people went out and collected them. Great example, the sables coming from Montana. Montana had a giant ice cube over top of it, and then it had a lot of really pointy mountains about 10, 20,000 years ago. So the hognose have moved up in there, but it was only a few that then we got many from. So the science behind the morphs is actually really freaking cool. So with the corns,
absolutely,
we're just pulling, we just happened to collect them since they're so common across much of their range. Even though they're common, that doesn't mean that they're diverse genetically. So if you pull from the right population, you can get this predisposition for getting these crazy phenotypes to pop out of them, which is really kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So yes, I'm trying to get myself into the morphs. When I learned all that nerdy biology, I was like, all right, that's kind of cool. So
let's do another one. Let's pop another one up here. I love this.
Okay.
This is fun.
I would say let's go into, I was actually thinking, so we're talking about genetic diversity. Sometimes there's a little too much maybe, and we have hybrids. And there's two mutations that we can definitively say came in through hybrid breedings. One of them being scaleless. So I guess we will start with scaleless.
Yes. All right, here we go. Hold on one second. I don't have enough screens. I need one more screen, and this would work.
No, I have the same problem. I have so many things up on so many different screens.
Okay, so here we go. Because when I go and make the PowerPoint, it makes this go away. So here we go. Well, while I'm getting this up here, why don't we introduce it? So
okay. Well, as far as the way they look just like snakes, but they just don't have scales. They kind of look a little goofy, but they kind of look a little goofy, but they feel like velvet crawling through your hands. There they are. And the first one came out of a lone egg from a corn breeding to an embryo. They were working on doing like creamsicle stuff, which is just the name that we have for an amelanistic version of the corn embryo hybrid. So they were working potential creamsicle, and then a scaleless was the last surviving egg in one of their clutches. And apparently both of the parents were a bit old when they were bred, and they were not able to breed the parents again. So, I mean, my hypothesis is either or both. The mutation caused by the age of the parents, because the older an animal gets, the more things can deteriorate, like the genetics wise, or had to do with the actual hybrid breeding itself kind of messing up with some of the genetics and causing the lack of scales, which there's still some little scales on it, but it is mostly scaleless. It's not as scaleless as your scaleless ball pythons. The scaleless ball pythons are for the most part completely scaleless, right?
I think so.
As far as I know, I don't know.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's like this is a colubrid space. Why are we talking about python? These do retain. They have some scales, usually on their face and around their mouth, which means they do keep their egg tooth, which is good. That's one thing that people worried about with scaleless ball pythons, and they still cut, I think, all of the scaleless ball python eggs because I don't think they even develop an egg tooth, where corn snakes develop enough scales that they do develop an egg tooth. So this happened in France, and then Brian Barczyk of BHB was actually the first to import them into the US. And so for the most part, any of the scaleless that are in the US did sort of originate with BHB. I'm sure that there were some other imports, like especially since then. But I actually do have some of the original BHB scaleless line. That's my scaleless line came from BHB. So I say line, my scaleless project, whatever, came from BHB.
One of the things I find neat about the scaleless corns is I didn't realize how much coloration took place in the scale.
Oh, yeah.
And so once you see, so I'm saying that for individuals, if you've not really paid attention to scaleless or looked at scaleless corns before, you could have the different morphs that you may be familiar with. So whether it's a normal or let's say an anathoristic, if it's something that you have seen before, the scaleless version is not going to be the exact same look, but without scales. The colors are different. I mean, an anery is more purple than gray and black. And so I just think it was really neat. And it is one where I would say, whether you are someone who hates scaleless animals, because I know there's that population out there that wants nothing to do with them because they're, blasphemy, but it's hard to argue the coloration and how pretty scaleless corns of whatever morph, additional morph and combo, because they stand out. I mean, they're very vibrant snakes.
One thing I like to say, as someone who wears glasses, I don't know if you guys wear glasses, but I typically do. I like to say that the scales like almost make it more crisp, like make the pattern more crisp. But like if you take the scales off, it's like taking your glasses off and it's a little more fuzzy. A whole pattern is just a little more fuzzed out, kind of like faded out in a way. But no, I don't know. But to me, it's just like I took my glasses off and looking at a snake.
Sarah, I'm just going to point out, Sarah, I told Zac this earlier. I officially had to get bifocals.
Oh no.
Just 2 days ago. So, you kind of bringing this up. It's not real, it's not really happy about that, Sarah. It's I put that away. So
now all of your snakes will look like scaleless. So
there you go. So quick question on the scaleless. Do these have ventral scales or no?
Yes.
Yes. Some.
Yes,
but they were reduced. Yeah. Yes, I had to think about it for a second. I was like, because I actually do not have like visual scaleless. I have het scaleless, so like I don't have one to look at and compare. But yes, I believe they do.
There you go.
And also funnily enough, if that's a word, because scaleless exists, we now know how the lavender mutation in corn snake works. So the lavender mutation, I don't have a photo of it or anything, but essentially it removes pretty much all of the yellows and pretty much all of the reds, and you are left with like a powder purple snake with the same general pattern as just a regular corn snake, but it's just sort of like a powder purple gray color, and it's called lavender. It was originally called mocha because when they hatch out, they almost look kind of brown, but they get more purple as they age. And a lot of people we just didn't really know how it worked. It's like, is this a pigment mutation? Like what is it? It is partially a pigment mutation in that it's hypomelanistic. It does remove some of that melanin. But underneath the scales, a lavender just looks like a normal corn snake. It's not purple. It's red and orange. It kind of actually just looks like a hypo corn snake. So we found out that lavender is a scale mutation and not a pigment mutation by doing scaleless corn snakes, mixing them with everything. So even if you don't like scaleless, at least for the scientific version, like for the scientific like basis of it, it has helped us understand the species that we love more. And so, hate it or love it, we now know better how lavender works. And there's actually a mutation in humans that does the same thing that lavender does now. I have information on that somewhere, but yeah, it turns your skin like kind of or not your skin, your hair kind of like a purpley color, but like you're born with it. And so I can send you that information if you want. I also did a deep dive on lavender on my channel or Scaleless, both on my channel, so I'm sure that it's linked in there as well. Right on. Not to plug my channel, shameless plug.
Well, let's actually plug the channel because I forgot to plug the channel. So I watched a couple videos and thought, why can't Sarah just do all the snakes?
Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, if someone paid me enough, I would do it. If someone was like, we will pay you $30 an hour. If they told me they'd pay me $10 an hour, I'd probably do it. But let's make it a fair wage and say $30 an hour on top of all the rest of the stuff I have to do. Then I would do it. I would research every snake in the world, and I would write this book for every snake. I would do it because I love it. I love learning it. But corn snakes are my jam, and so that's why I've done it for corn snakes.
Yes. Well, if you want to learn about the origins of a morph and what the morph is, and see a bunch of pretty pictures of the morph, go to Sarah's channel because it's a really, really good one. And what is the name of your channel?
Sarah's Snake Shop.
There we go.
Pretty simple. Yeah.
All right.
Sarah with an H, right?
Sarah with an H. That's even my Starbucks order. I go to Starbucks. They're like, "Who's it for?" Sarah with an H, and they laugh at me every time. But they don't put it on there if I don't ask. So
there you go.
Sarah with an H, please.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna hit the button. We're gonna move on to the next one.
Let's do it.
Ultra. So Ultra was one of those kind of weird ones. So this was the first like actual like allelic mutation that we had. So Ultra is allelic with amelanistic, which confused the absolute crap out of everybody who was working with it for the first time, because up to that point, everything was just recessive, simple recessive, really nothing else. And they had these, they called it the ultra hypo because it's technically a hypomelanistic type. It doesn't have that full melanin. It's reduced a bit. And they thought that every single like ultra that they had was het for amel. And it turns out they just had ultramels. And that was originally, I think it took until, I don't remember when the first one was actually found. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was finally proven in 2004 that it was allelic with amelanistic. So and I think that it was found in like, I don't know, the late 90s maybe, because it took them years to really figure it out. And they didn't know if it was a hybrid or not for a long time, because the people who it came from originally were very hush hush.
That drives me nuts. I hate that crap.
Yeah. I have names, but I don't have to name them if it's not necessary. They were very hush hush about everything, and there were definitely a lot of very seasoned corn snake breeders back then, though, who were breeding corn snakes or who were breeding these ultras, going like, they seem pure to me. Like, I don't see any signs of hybridization. But you know, it's so difficult to say, because even back then, like, this was when some of this was happening, a lot of people were still considering Emryi to kind of be a subspecies of corn. And they didn't really see that a lot of like closely related species were hybrids if they were bred together. And so it was kind of a little wishy-washy. And then it did eventually come out that Ultra did originate from a hybrid breeding between a corn snake and a gray rat snake, specifically a white oak phase.
I was going to say that it has to be white oak, because there's not many gray rat mutations out there. I mean, I know of striped, I know of albino, I know of white oak, and that's about it. So, I mean, that was nothing that looks, I mean, I guess I could see where white oak would be a piece of this, but
well, it's a mutation. So like,
right.
It's not like it is not white oak specifically like brought into corn snakes, but it's like because they bred a white oak rat with a corn, they got this hybrid. Either they said that they weren't exactly sure, but they did confirm that either it was a hybrid, a known hybrid that was caught in the wild that originated this, or they bred it in captivity and it produced the first ultra. They couldn't remember which one it was because they were doing a bit of both. But it is now like widely accepted that ultra did come from that hybrid breeding between those two, gray rat snake, specifically a white oak. And I don't know if, they don't even know for sure. So like we don't know for sure if it was really like a white oak phase or like what, but that's the story. That's the story.
I had no idea there was gray rat in this at all.
I have a question.
Oh yeah.
The morphs you're talking about, I know about Scaleless because you see Scaleless at a show and it's got its infamous, history. Eric Westmoreland's favorite, by the way.
Love you, Eric.
Love you, Eric.
Yeah, poor Eric. Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for him with getting all his snakes taken away.
But with this, like, how rare are these? If people are like, oh, ultra, I want to get one of the. Are these morphs we're going over today common morphs? Are these kind of
these are
not
super
fringe,
common.
but niche morphs? I think ultras are relatively common. That's ringing bells.
I was about to say because I had reached out to Eric whenever I hatched out some animals, and I like, what are these morphs? And ultra was what he's like. You've got ultra in those, and now given it,
like,
I've been so removed from corn snake breeding for so long that I mean, it's I'm having to learn all this again, and yeah, I had no idea that there was gray rat influence in there at all. This is news to me.
And these, so the one I obviously have the names labeled. I produced the one on the left. It's slightly older there. Now these are not like first generation though. These have been outcrossed, and the one that Feral Captives, the photo on the right, that has been bred into really nice Okatee lines for a long time. So a lot of these they're not going to look like the hybrid, they're not, because they've been bred into corn snakes for so long.
Right.
There is even a like rumor potentially that Tessera came from a hybrid breeding. I don't believe that the original Tessera came from hybrid breedings, but I do have a suspicion that some people who breed Newport Cal King jungle corn crosses, I believe to the core of my being that some of them have purposely bred Newport into corn snakes and sold them as pure. So when you are getting Tessera, just like be aware of where it came from, because like as far back as in the generations as you possibly can, because and this isn't just a belief. Like I have spoken to some hybrid breeders who are like, oh hush hush, I'd never do that, oh my god, who would do that, oh not me. And I'm like, I know that you're doing it, like, and so it happens, and I'm just saying, just be aware of it. It happens more outside the US than it does in the US. It's more going to be like I don't want to point out a specific area of the world, but most of the people in the US know they couldn't get away with that. But a lot of people outside the US are just importing into the US, and then the corn snakes just go into pet stores, and then they go into our breeding stock, and we have no idea. So I'm not saying Tessera is a hybrid. I am saying that some things that are being sold as Tesseras are very likely hybrids. And it shows in a lot of the babies. Like sometimes a baby from a Tessera clutch hatches, and I'm like, there's no way that's not part California King. There's no way. It has to be. They will be completely like black and white and banded. I'm like, that is a jungle corn. You can't convince me otherwise. But all that is to say, we don't know where Tessera came from exactly, but the story is that it came from pure Okatee lines, so that's what I'm sticking with. And we're not even talking about Tessera. We're talking about Ultra. So.
Let's go to the next.
Right. Yes. I got this down a little
Do you
bit
like my
now.
little PowerPoint? This is the first time I've made a
I do.
PowerPoint since college.
You
All
sent
right.
this to me, and this blew me away. This is for
Black
those
diamond?
who can't. Yeah, for those who can't see these pictures right now, this is one of the neatest corn snakes. The most unusual from what I would expect a corn snake
Yep.
to look like. Let's put
And
it
these
that
came
way.
from Miami phases, like South
Yeah,
Florida,
pure.
Miami phase corns.
Yep, pure Miami phases. FG reptiles in France. Now they did have some hypo and motley, and I think that maybe some amelanistic was also in the line. So there is obviously a little bit of morphs, bringing in morphs from different places, but the snakes that they had were Miamis that they'd been breeding, like the family of. Because they wanted to sell Miamis. Like they're, you know, so they got Miamis from somebody in America, and they've been inbreeding them in their collection for a few generations. And then back in 2022, this freaking black snake pops out, and there was actually a few that popped out. So there was, this is the quote unquote normal form of black diamond. This is just black diamond, nothing else. And so for anybody who's wondering what we're looking at, so the saddles are now completely pure black. So those saddle blotches, totally black. The ground color is almost completely white, but has a ton of like black speckling in it to the point where it doesn't really look, you can't even hardly see the background because it's so almost covered in black speckles. And the eyes are also completely pitch black. Now you guys can't see it. Nobody can see it because I didn't send the photo, but the bellies are completely stark black with no checkers. So a lot of people were saying, oh, this is just a black rat. This is just a black rat. No, it's not just a black rat.
No.
They have very different look to them.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things I guess I wanted to point out. And this is in both of you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when it comes to Miami's, they tend to be smaller than most other corns, correct? And to me, their heads even look different than most other corns. And I assume that it's that the head and the smaller body is because I believe their primary food source are more lizards. They're more of a lizard-eating corn snake than rodents. In fact, I actually believe pure Miamis can be a little more finicky to get started on pinkies than other corns could. Sometimes they need a lizard scent. But looking at the heads on these individuals, for someone to want to say that that's black rat snake, no, not even close.
Right.
That's, I mean, if there's anybody that knows what a black rat snake head looks like, it's me. Trust me.
Right.
Not even close. That is, not only is that corn snake, that is Miami corn snake head right there.
Yeah.
It's smaller. So
yeah. Yep.
Very cool.
So that's the most recent one that was found in 2022. And again, just popped up randomly in a breeder's collection. They had been, I think they said this was the first time that they were breeding this specific mother to her son. So they had bred this mother with a male for a long time and then held back a son and finally bred this female to her son. If I remember the story correctly, I could be wrong. Once again, like that's why I put the links at the bottom of everything. So you guys could just go check these out and read the stories if you wanted.
Cool.
So quick
So
question
there's
on
that.
this,
That's
Sarah.
the newest one.
Quick question. The picture on the left is obviously a hatchling. I'm guessing the picture on the right is a little bit older as it's aged a little bit. So,
yes,
okay.
Correct.
The reason I asked that is because so I can describe to individuals who can't see the picture right now. If you're familiar with hypermelanistic California kings, that is what the hatchling reminds me of. Meaning you can see the saddles. So like now obviously with a hypermelanistic cow king, you're going to have various degrees where you can have where it looks like a Mexican black king where it's jet black. And you can have some that look more like a dirty, type of cow king. So this animal looks like what I would consider one of the stronger hypermelanistic cow kings, not where they're solid black, but where you can tell it's a hypermelanistic, not just a dirty cow king. That's what this hatchling looks like. And as it grows, as it ages, it looks like the background pattern really starts to clean out That's where that white, starts to come through. There's still black there, but it's, I mean, again, a very, very neat looking corn snake, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're still only in France, as far as I know. I don't think there's been any imported into the U.S., but they have continued to. They've actually proven it. I mean, it's now proven recessive, so there's that. And they have the hypo versions of it, as well as the motley version. The motley version looks super interesting, and the hypo version, it looks like, you remember the color of the baby odd corn snake, that weird brown cream color. That's what a hypomelanistic black diamond looks like, is that weird poop cream brown color.
Nice. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the last one now.
Yeah.
And
so
look
this
at that
is
price tag.
Yeah. This was last year, so I went ahead and priced that at 2023. Because I don't really know what 2024 prices are quite yet. Not enough things have been posted. I also do a series on my channel of corn snake prices every December. So like the prices that throughout the year, how they changed, what was most expensive, what was cheapest, all that kind of stuff. And so I already had this information. And since you guys also go over a lot of like market information stuff, I thought this would be interesting-ish.
Appreciate that.
Yep. Microscales, also pure Miami, for those who are wondering. It was found. Hold on, I have it in my notes. In the Netherlands by Barbara Velusen. I might not be pronouncing that correctly. And she again had bred a father to a daughter and had gotten a few microscales out of that. Repeated the breeding, got a few more microscales. Bred a few together and proved it to be recessive. And it's actually allelic to Scaleless. So if you breed microscale to Scaleless, you get what we call microscaleless, which it just is like more busily scaled than a Scaleless and not quite as busily scaled as a microscaleless. But they have those little tiny bead scales, itty bitty bead scales. I have one microscale, and I named him Velthru after Barbara Velthusen. If that's I don't know if I'm saying her name right, and I apologize if I am butchering it, but I did name my snake after her. And they're just the cool. He's just the coolest little guy. I love this. This was my dream corn snake, and that sounds really strange to some people. Like people are like, oh, I want a palmetto. Most people, that was their dream corn snake, a palmetto. Everybody wanted palmetto. I was like, give me that tiny scales. Give me that. I don't know, something about it. I just absolutely love it. And I love that it's a scale mutation that is obvious. That's not a hybrid, because I don't love having hybrids. I have some, like sort of, kind of, but I love having this pure Miami line scale mutation.
Did this just pop up in 2023, or has this been around for a while?
Oh, no, this has been around for a long time. I was just saying the 2023, it was the most expensive mutation in 2023. Gotcha. That's what that number means. No, it was found in 2010. So it's it is it's not new.
So I have a couple questions. And
sure.
My questions on this are, and because I don't want to put this morph down. I'm not that guy, but this is me wanting to understand more of the appeal of it. And so, because what I'm looking at, the picture that we have here of the one that's sold, that's a normal micro scale.
That's just a normal, yeah. Yep,
because so with this mutation, there's really no difference correct me if I'm wrong, no difference in its appearance other than simply the scales are much smaller.
Yep.
Is that fair?
Yep.
And so when you breed two micro scales together, you don't get anything different. You just get more micro scales, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, plus whatever, AML micro scale or whatever else. But yeah.
I guess I'm confused.
So here's what I like about it, and it's not very easy to see in the photos that I sent, I guess. I tried to find good representation photos, but there's not very many microscale out there. But to me, it reminds me of like if you have like a scaleless snake and you mist it with water, and it gets like covered in just little beads of water. That's what microscale looks like. It looks like it's covered in tiny beads of colored water. And I think that looks cool. I think it looks awesome. So
and that's fair. It's what this is where the market mind comes out, and why I was asking that question is, so for example, and please no one think that I'm putting down any of these mutations.
Not everybody's going to like every morph. It just
right.
Totally
well, and
fine.
It's not necessarily about liking or disliking it. That's not what I'm getting at. It's when we talk about numbers, values, and when it comes to corn snakes, a lot of the value that's placed on a corn snake is the project worthiness of it, for example, right? And so, for example, I've had people ask me about palmettos, and do I work with them? Why wouldn't? And I don't work with them. Now, they are still sought after. I get asked for them a lot, but the reason I don't is because really, if I'm going to, it's just going to be the average palmetto. And because I see it as what I call a dead end mutation.
Yeah.
Meaning whether you have, if you have a butter palmetto, you have a white snake and these little specks are yellow.
Yeah.
Or if you have a regular, now it's red. If you you know what I mean? So, but those little specks are just minute in the grand scheme of things. So it doesn't really have the pizzazz as you add more to it. So that's what I guess I'm getting at, as you do a combo with it, it really doesn't get any better than what the base mutation was. And so for me, for microscale to have the price tag that it has on it, when I see it as it's still they're going to be the same when you do combos, with them.
Yeah.
And so that's where I guess I'm more surprised at that being the high, the top end as far as value in the corn snake mutation world, because I don't see it as well, yes, you can certainly put all the combos with it. They don't look extremely different than what the natural, look would be.
Yeah. I think that it is, for one, it's new to the US.
It's the rarity of it. Absolutely. And that, I get why that jumps the price.
That's the main thing right now, is the rarity. Now, what I want to do is put it into lavender, because wouldn't it be cool to have a red snake that had purple scales? That's my, I'm raising up like a microscale and a lavender just specifically for that project. So I think that would be cool. I just think that it was cool. And I'm not saying that long term wise it will hold the price. I have no idea.
Well, nothing will. We know how that goes.
I think it has, to me, it has as much potential in that regard as Scaleless does, because it's different enough. So one thing that wasn't really showing up super well in those photos is a lot of times the scales are so small that you get gaps between them. And so that also kind of just changes the whole.
And that's fair. And that's kind of, to be fair on my statement on that, I've not seen enough or really any pictures of microscale combos. Maybe it continues to look different and things like that. So that's fair. Is once some of this comes out, I may have to completely change my tune. And I'd be happy to do so. I can admit when I'm wrong. I'm married. I know what it's like. I can do this. So
you don't have to like it. You don't. It's actually that's one thing I love about corn snakes, is there's something for everybody, but not everything's going to be for everybody. And that's totally valid. And for example, I don't like tessera. I really just don't care about it. I would rather have any other pattern mutation in my collection other than tessera. I have it because there were other things going on, other things that I bought that happened to have tessera in it. Now I have tesseras, but I just don't care about it. And that is almost offensive to some people, because some people are they swear up and down tessera is the best pattern mutation because it's dominant, blah, blah, blah. And I'm I just don't care. Give me a pinstripe motley. Give me a terrazzo. I don't care about tessera. I just don't. So your feelings about a mutation that may be a dead end mutation are valid. Like you may just not like see that, and that's totally fine.
And again, just to make sure I'm saying, it's not that I don't like the mutations.
I know.
It's just saying that, you know, when it comes from that market standpoint of would I want to pay the price that, you know, is being asked on these, I wouldn't, because I don't see, you know, the continued combos, you know. But I will say, I mean, out of the two, I see more validity in combos with microscale than I see with Palmetto, because, you know, as we were just discussing, Palmetto just wipes itself out. So, you know, but just curious, just wanted to make sure that I was
very cool,
you know, seeing what I was seeing.
Oh yeah,
this was excellent.
This is fun. Like I said, I love learning the history.
Even though the first third of the episode, the universe was like, "Oh hell no!"
It was asking us, "How bad do you want this?"
And we did quit.
I want to know real bad.
That's right.
So, all right. So, we'll definitely have you back on to do more corn snake stuff.
Yeah.
But we're gonna ask the final question. No. I'm very curious to know your perspective. So we oftentimes talk about like where are we going? This is the legacy of Matt Most with the podcast, because he started this question. So if you're listening, Matt, we're still keeping the tradition alive. But you know, Clint and I obviously with our podcast, you with your channel, you know, we're trying to educate and motivate. That's the way I like to look at it. And we have a tendency to have rosy colored glasses on when we look at the future, but then at the same time, you kind of look at some elements of herpetoculture and you're kind of like, yeah, I'm not going there. I run away from that place screaming. So the future with corn snakes, we'll keep it corn specific since that's your expertise. Yeah. Have we seen what we're going to see? Is the sky the limit? Is it a good time to be a corn snake breeder? Is it just kind of give us what's the next 5 years going to look like?
In corn snakes or with me in corn snakes?
In corn snakes in general, if you're a member of the corn snake community, is it a good time to be in this community? Is there infighting in the community that's not good? What is your perspective for now going into the future?
I think it's a good time to be starting out right now. So if someone is just now thinking, man, I'd really love to like actually take that step into breeding corn snakes for the first time, I think that this is a good time for that. For one, because there's so many viable selling options now. Like when I first started, there was king snake, which you had to pay for, and fauna classifieds, which had all number of who knows what kind of people in it sometimes. And so that was it. Or Craigslist, which you couldn't technically rehome snakes on Craigslist anyway, or sell them. You could rehome them, but you couldn't sell them. And so now there's so many viable selling options, and all these selling platforms like really want sellers. They want sellers, and obviously you want sellers. And so I think that if you are someone who you're like, man, I would get into breeding corn snakes, but I don't have an outlet. Like that was like the biggest block for a lot of people when I kind of got into it. Like everybody was like, the only way I can sell is on at shows, or maybe on like, is it fauna classifieds?
Fauna.
Yeah,
it is fauna classifieds. Okay. I was like, is that the right word? Yes. So it's like, those were the only options: sell at shows or sell on fauna classifieds, or pay to sell on king snake, which a lot of people didn't want to pay to sell on king snake. And so but now that roadblock is essentially gone, I especially now, because I guess, you know, Morph Market started, but now there's the Show Me, and there's also Find a Reptile, and of course there's still the old things. Like you could still go back to king snake if you want. You could still go back to fauna classifieds. I don't think anybody probably is, but there's so many options now. So like for me, personally, I think that if you are listening and you are thinking about taking that step, I would start planning for it now. And then maybe do it next year and just do like one breeding and see if it's for you, because there are so many ways to sell now. As far as like the future, it's really hard to tell, with it has not been, this has not been the best year to be a big corn snake breeder, I don't think, so far. Now it could change. But I've had, I want to say, nearly record low sales up to this point this year. And for seemingly no reason other than people just don't have money. That's kind of like one of the big issues is people don't have money. And so either you're going to be, selling corn snakes for the price that they were selling 15 years ago, which was like $30 a piece or less at a table, or, you're going to be holding on to your snakes for a while. So like it is a little difficult to make money. Like you're not going to be I don't personally see me making a ton of money this year selling online, I should say. Shows seem to be popping off this year though. Like lately shows have been popping off. And so I would say if you're just getting into it, invest in getting some tables at some local shows, support your local shows, especially if they're run by good people. Do some research on your local shows to make sure they're run by good people, because especially if you are in the Indiana, Ohio, Illinois-ish area where I am, just like be aware there's some shady people. But
yeah, there
are. And I mean, I think that we have a lot more. I mean, I don't think corn snakes are ever going to stop. Although I do think the thing that we have a critical shortage on, or we're getting to have a critical shortage on, is like wild caught outcrossings. I don't know if we need them, but we don't hardly have any, as we said before, there's like pure corn snakes that even really have much of a resemblance to corn snakes in the wild. And obviously we have people who are line breeding, wild caught this, wild caught that. And that's cool. But anytime you're line breeding, whether you intend to or not, you're selecting for things that are not of the wild type, unless you're literally just catching wild type corns and throwing them all in a container together. If you are line breeding a wild line and you're holding back certain ones, you're holding them back because they have certain things about them, and then you are causing them to be further away from the original wild caught that you were trying to preserve originally. So I think that we maybe need to do more like wild outcrossings, but I don't know, like it would just be nice to go somewhere and be like, I do want to get a corn snake that's just a corn snake, nothing else. I don't want there to be any hets. I don't want there to be any whatever.
That's what I want.
Like, yeah, just a corn snake, nothing else. And so I think that if we don't find a sort of reasonable, viable way to have more of that in the hobby again, we might. I don't know if how bad it would be, but it would also not be good, So
yeah, okay.
But on a positive note, I mean, I think that we're gonna have green corn snakes within the next 10 years.
There we go. Okay. Well, thank you for coming on our very first not live feed. We're not that brave yet.
No.
Our very first video episode.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So if people want to find you, where can they do that?
You can find me, well, mostly on YouTube. Like the YouTube is going to be the main thing. So I am just Sarah's Snake Shop on YouTube. And my Facebook is a thing I check every day. So also Sarah's Snake Shop on Facebook. And like I have everything. I have a TikTok, also Sarah's Snake Shop. I'm also Sarah's Snake Shop on Instagram. I post nearly daily snake photos on Instagram. So if you want just a random corn snake photo every day, that's where to follow me there. And I am working on getting my website back, but Squarespace stole it and won't give it back. So we're working on that. But otherwise, it would be sarahssnakeshop.com.
There you go.
And it might be eventually again until, unless Squarespace is holding it hostage right now. So
I gotcha. So Clint, where can people find you, my friend?
You can find me on Facebook under Clint Bartley or Metazotics. You can find us on Instagram, MetazoticsLLC. Of course, you can go to Metazotics.com and use coupon code CC Radio at any time, and that'll give you 5% off of anything that you purchase. I also want to point out that you can find Sarah, Zac, and myself, all three, at Colubrid Fest in
Yes,
just
you
a
can.
couple months. So
there we go. All righty. You want to find me, Dr. Crawdad, on Instagram, Zac Loughman on Facebook. And then, as always, future grad students, future undergrads, you want to work with snakes and go to college, look up West Liberty. We have a couple hundred of them.
Can I do it with a philosophy bachelor's?
You actually can do the graduate degree with a philosophy bachelor's.
Note to
There
self:
is a way.
email Zac leader.
There you go. So, whatever time of day, evening, morning, night it is, I hope you have a good one. Signing off from our first video recording. Later.
we did it.